Hey everybody, this is Steve Bisbee coming to you from the Hideaway headquarters. This is our third podcast of the Steve Bisbee podcast. Today, I'm joined by class of 2019, Zach Barone. Zach works at JLL in Pittsburgh, where he's originally from, and he was on one of the Penn State case teams to first win the Villanova case competition, at least as far back as I know. So welcome, Zach. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Looking forward to it.
Where are you at geographically right now?
I'm in Pittsburgh in my office downtown, one of the few companies who's actually back in the office in this city. So downtown's pretty dead right now. It's a weird scene, but we've been back in the office since June, and I definitely like being in the office, a little more focused than at home.
That's good. So did you start with JLL right after graduation?
Yes and no. Technically, I started with a company called HFF, and the day after I officially accepted my job offer, it was announced that JLL was acquiring HFF. So technically, I worked for HFF for about a month and a half before the acquisition closed, but I'm working with the same team that I initially started with at HFF.
What do you do?
I work in capital markets, so we have two primary business lines that I'm involved in. The first one being debt placement. So we represent borrowers and essentially shop loans for them, depending on what kind of assets they have, what their overall business plan is. And we put together a targeted list of lenders that we market the deal to and then help facilitate the loan selection and closing process. The other business line we do is investment sales, where we are representing owners of commercial real estate and we're marketing the property to them to potential buyers.
So on your list of lenders, do you guys qualify your groups of lenders like balance sheet lenders, agency lenders, CMBS lenders? Walk me through the categories of lenders that you guys are working to source that.
So the main categories are CMBS, balance sheet and regional banks, life insurance companies, agencies, and then debt funds or bridge lenders. So typically the deals I work on, and I'm typically working in the asset classes of hotels, retail, and office, which are obviously the hardest to do right now. Pre-COVID, we did a lot of CMBS loans on a lot of stabilized assets. And for stabilized assets, CMBS often offers the most favorable economics for potential borrowers. And same with life insurance companies. They offer somewhat similar structure, a little less aggressive, but favorable pricing on stabilized assets. And then our regional banks are also very aggressive on basically any asset type that's in Pittsburgh.
Go
ahead.
How did you get to learn the nuances between lender types? Did you know that before you interviewed, or did you only learn that after? I'll give you an example. LTV versus prepayment, kind of at opposite ends of the spectrum.
Right. I had the benefit of interning for a good friend of yours, James Milan, at CBRE after my junior year. James is very well recognized in the industry. He works on debt placement in New York. And through that internship program with James, I got to learn the major lender types and what their typical appetite is. My understanding has certainly been enhanced since I started my job, but I had a high level understanding of these lender types and what they're typically looking for coming into the job.
I'm thinking about class and how to teach exactly what you're talking about. And I don't know that it's something that can be learned in the schoolhouse, but what do you think you wish you would have known as it relates to whether it's an acquisition versus a refinance? If you only have 60 days to close and you have a whole lot of hard money out, do you stay away from the CMBS lender because execution is sort of in debt? If interest rates, there's a ton of volatility leading up to closing day, how do you teach that?
That's a great question, and it's easy to teach the high level economics of what these lenders are typically offering, but I think you just hit a few great points there. That's something I didn't understand at all coming into this job. Um, so the point you brought up about if you have a tight closing timeline, you might not want to go the CMBS route. Like understanding those more qualitative features and upsides and downsides of the different lender types, I think is an incredibly important point to get across. I'm not sure, how you do that in a classroom, especially in a virtual classroom. I think it's something you kind of have to learn on the fly and in the role. But in terms of understanding the economics of these lender types and understanding what risk level they're willing to take on and what product types and what business plans are compatible with these lender types, I think is something that's important to understand and that we could probably get the point across pretty clear in the classroom.
In terms of your role to generate additional leads, share with us what you're doing right now to find additional people who want your services to get new debt.
Yeah, so I'm in a very fortunate position that a lot of people probably are not in at my level. A lot of the producers in my office have been doing this for 25 plus years, which means they have a very well established client base that they know they're going to come knocking on our door when it's time to refinance or recapitalize or whatever it may be. We do have one younger producer who's getting started who is a little more, he has to go earn it and prove himself. But, in terms of my role and how my time is most effectively utilized, it's really just supporting the producers in our office who have more opportunities to work on deals than they can accept. And that's a really fortunate position for me to be in.
Sure. And are you, when you're underwriting and evaluating a deal, I understand that you're representing the ultimate borrower, but how critical, before you choose the list of lenders that you're going to go to, how critical are you on the underwriting?
I'm definitely critical, and my bosses are even more critical. Every number counts. One assumption, one number, one mistake can really make a big difference, and that's something you definitely learn on the job. Just really getting into the details and double checking and triple checking and making sure you can support every single number you have in your spreadsheet. And that's even the case when you have rent rolls that are 300 lines, when you have 4 years of operating history. You really need to have an understanding of every single line item and every single cell in your spreadsheet and underwriting to make sure you can, one, defend your assumptions, and two, know the information you are putting in there is accurate and factual.
Why did you go to Penn State?
I went to Penn State for the real estate program, which is something probably not many people can say, but I had the benefit. My dad works in the industry. We have a family business in real estate appraisal. So I got exposed very young. I was informed of what my options would be moving forward, and it seemed like a good fit. So Penn State was one of the few undergraduate programs that actually offered a real estate program. And that's a big reason why I went. I would say the second reason is the size, the alumni network. It just had everything I could possibly want and more. I knew it was a safe choice and one I wouldn't regret.
Yeah. Your time as an upperclassman at Penn State is very concurrent with my time involved with RM 497 and the boot camp momentum and learning more about what the advisory board does for the Institute. So I believe you were a part of RM 497 3 semesters. You joined in your spring of your junior year. And then, of course, you won the thing as a senior in the spring. Can you share with us, just off the top of your head, what your key takeaways were from taking the course? And then specifically, as it relates to Villanova, we can get into your senior year at Villanova.
Yeah. The key takeaways from the course is how to make money in real estate, and
Got it.
and learning how to underwrite and put together a deal. And that's just something that takes to the next level outside of the classwork. And at the end of the day, it's essentially what I'm doing in this office every single day. So learning to evaluate those investment opportunities and how to think about them, understand the risks and the mitigation tactics, and target returns. It really helped me set a fundamental base that took it beyond what the required classwork was. And I think being able to participate in Villanova and Cornell and all the other case competitions was the best way of actually replicating what an analyst does, and being able to apply the skill set I learned in your class and then take it to even the next level at Villanova and get feedback from these professionals who understand this better than anyone and have been in the business for decades. It was just an incredible opportunity and something that certainly I think set me apart from other people coming out of undergrad.
Yeah. You've lived a really, really good path that chained together a number of events. Taking the course, you were heavily recommended to me by Mallory. You took the course your junior year. You got to feel what not winning feels like. You had a great internship. Then you took it again senior year. So I want to fast forward now to the spring semester of your senior year. It's the spring of 2019. And I want you to give us kind of the 30,000-foot level of what the case was and what your role on the team of four was.
So on a high level, the case was a development pitch on a parcel in downtown Philadelphia, which was located on the Delaware riverfront, close to Penn's Landing. And there were some nuances with the case that we don't really need to get into, but essentially it was a development pitch. We ended up pitching it as a mixed-use development, residential, retail, and parking. So those are the high levels of the case. And in terms of what my role was, I think it was a little unique in the sense that I was a little bit of everything, kind of keeping an eye on everyone and stepping in where I needed to and where they needed help. But, when you have 4 to 6 people working on one case, there's only so much an individual person can do. And, for example, having 2 people do the numbers can get a little bit dangerous because everyone sets up their spreadsheets differently. And I don't know my teammates' model as well as he does. So, I kind of bounced around and I was looking at the 30,000-foot level of the case and just making sure everything was ticking and tying together. And I think, that definitely took us a few semesters to figure out what roles are best for everyone. And I had the benefit of working with the same 3 guys on 3 cases in a row. And I think by that final case, we realized, we need one financials person, one PowerPoint person, one market person, and then that 4th person is really someone who just oversees and makes sure everything's connected among those 3 segments.
Why did you guys win?
The reason I think we were the best team and worked the best together is, one, we had the benefit of doing 3 cases in a row and joining up junior year. But I think the biggest thing for us, and it sounds cheesy and corny, but we were all great friends, and we loved being around each other. We hung out in the summers. A few of us interned in New York together after our junior year. We just had, this connection and this teamwork where when we were working on these cases, it wasn't work. It was a fun project that we got to do together. And I think, looking forward to going to work with your friends and put together this final result for the case is something not a lot of teams have. And I think it certainly set us apart. And overall, we put together the best product. I think we all got really good internships also after our junior year. And having good internships, the information you learn in those internships is not something that can be learned or replicated in the classroom. And I think that was probably the other component that really set us apart. But honestly, just the overall teamwork and camaraderie between all of us, I think was special.
So you've really done a lot for the program since graduation. Thank you for staying in touch with me, staying in touch with the rest of the faculty and a number of students. We've posted your um, roundtable from fall with Brett Ambrogi and then one of the other gentlemen from boot camp online on the class Dropbox library. And you also wrote the Rothstein case last semester. Now, having seen a case competition from the perspective of being an alum and the author of the case, what conclusions would you draw from last semester, and what advice would you offer as the students go into this semester?
Conclusions from last semester. Well, first off, for everyone who participated in the Rothstein case, I was incredibly impressed. I was incredibly worried going into it, and all four teams absolutely blew me away. And what it showed me was our program's continuing to progress. We have momentum, and we have to keep that going. At the same time, working with my team individually, we put a lot of time into it. We spent a lot of time on the phone going through the numbers. So it also showed me, yeah, like these students really need this opportunity to, one, work on cases, and two, interact with alumni, because you just learn information that you cannot learn in the classroom. So I thought the case was an incredible success, and I hope we continue it moving forward. And I'm looking forward to being involved and helping with it any way I can. What was your second question?
Well, in terms of advice, and I'll tee it up with this question. When you and your team won in 2019, did you recommend specific tenants for either the office, retail? I think you had some
Yeah.
multifamily in there, but for office and retail, remind me if you recommended specific tenants as we approach a probable development case, probably in the Philadelphia
Yeah.
market. I want to tee up the students with the best advice possible. And in terms of winning versus losing, how specific should they be
Yeah.
in the tenant portion?
That's a great question. Something we spent a lot of time talking about, because in our previous cases, that was something where we really swung and missed. We completely neglected the tenant selection process. And as you know, for office and retail and industrial, the tenant selection is incredibly important to creating value at your property, and far outside just what the rent is. But for Villanova, my senior year, we focused in on retail concepts. There wasn't any office, but we were very specific with what types of retailers we saw being in this property. If you saw what the retail building was laid out as, we put a little rooftop terrace on there and suggested that would be a beer garden, for example. In terms of recommending specific tenants, that would be great. I think, not being in the industry and in these markets, that's nearly an impossible task to do accurately as a student. So if students have information on specific companies or retailers looking for space in a specific submarket, then by all means go for it. But I think just focusing on the overall concepts, what type of retailers you want at your property, what types of companies you want at your office building, I think is basically the big takeaway that students are going to really need to emphasize on future cases.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you for all the time you put into the program. We're not going to, I don't think we'll ever be able to repay you, but just know that your name is brought up quite frequently. I can think of no better legacy than for a student to have than for his name to be mentioned throughout the course of class, real estate boot camp events, case competitions, I'll bring in the trophy when we finally get back in person to class. And so I want to thank you for staying involved, continuing to serve Penn State. And would you be open that, to the extent students who hear this want to get in touch with you directly, would you be open to them reaching out to you to continue dialogue?
Absolutely. Feel free to provide any student with my contact information. Always happy to connect.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach, so much for your time. Zach Barone with JLL in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, class of 2019 at Penn State Smeal College of Business.